Ready?
Yes, we are. We are ready for the teleological argument. Second of the naturalistic theistic theories. Did everybody get a copy of those notes I passed out the other day? Supposed to be a little summary of stuff there this morning here at Tracy. It's a good thing her mother comes to school at least. When she had exams this weekend. 24. Yeah. All right, the teleological argument. Into which category would you place the teleological argument? Would you place it into the category of a posteriori or a priori? A posteriori or a priori? Now tell me what the a posteriori type of argument is. All right. The way I remember it is that posterior is Latin for rear end or backwards, right? And so the a posteriori type of reasoning is that you reason backward from the effect. That's the back end of it anyway. What happens first, cause or effect? Cause produces effect. So you're reasoning backwards from the effect to a cause. And all three of these first arguments fit in that category. If you wish. All right? Now, just by way of review, let's summarize the cosmological argument. What is the cosmological argument? Where? Okay, the very fact of such an effect, the fact of such an effect argues that there must be some cause that is adequate for such an effect, period. It's the simplest, the broadest of the arguments. Now, when you talk about the teleological argument, you're talking about a little more refined argument along with the same sort of thinking. And what's the point of the teleological argument? It's not just the fact of the world and the universe being the way it is, but that it's the obvious purpose that is evident in the design, right? So it's the design of, the intricacy in the design of the obvious purposefulness. And that, you need to put the two together. The design argues for obvious purpose. Now, it's easy to get those two arguments confused if you don't relate it to purpose, right? The nature of the universe and the design of the universe are basically the same thing, right? But it's the fact that the intricacy, the manifold particulars, as they relate to one another, you put them all together, it's obvious that somebody designed it to work a certain way, right? So they connote purpose. And since that particular fact is true of the universe in which we live, that argues for a first cause that is intelligent. The cosmological argument argues for the fact of a cause and the power of a cause. Understand? Something had to make, like if you go out into a field and there's a great big crater, right? There's a great big crater out in the field. We assume that effect had to have been caused by something really big and powerful. There's no intricate design to a crater. It's just a hole in the ground. There's no beauty to it. It's just, you would be hard pressed to see any symmetry outside of the fact that it's more than likely round. All right. But now to look at a snowflake. All right. And then to look at another snowflake and another snowflake, or to look at a human eyeball. Right. With the with the muscles here in the front, and the cones and the rods in the back, attached to a nerve here that's attached to a brain here. Obviously this tells us something more about a first cause than the crater. The crater argues for a powerful first cause. The intricacy of the interrelationships of all the things involved in this effect argues for an intelligent first cause, somebody that put it this way for a purpose, somebody that's thinking. Right? And that's the difference between the cosmological and teleological arguments. Does that help? Okay. Now, what Schaeffer said in part of this discussion was that he says if you take the human eye, for example, all by itself, and then you take the human ear with its intricate connections auditorially, then he could say you could take the human nose for that, and he didn't use the human nose, but the olfactory organ that's in the back of your nose, and as it relates to the brain, they're all infinitely and intricately connected. Now the fact that this exists independently of this, and that a nose also exists, doesn't mean that they're necessarily related, does it? But the fact that they are related, the eye doesn't cause an ear to happen. Neither does a nose cause an ear to happen. But the fact that they all work in harmony and they're all connected to the same gray matter, that they work perfectly. Now that shows design. It doesn't show chance. The most memorable example of obvious purpose that I can think of is an example that Gary Parker used at an assembly that he did at White Pines Collegiate back 10 years ago when he came to the Sioux. He's an ICR scientist with the Institute of Creation Research, and he used the example of a bombardier beetle. You know how a bombardier beetle works? I can't draw a bombardier beetle, but let's just say, right, that when you get too close to a bombardier beetle, that it has the capacity inside of itself to store gases at a certain temperature and of a certain acidity, and there's a combination of gases and acids in this, and it can, its method of self-defense is to explode, basically, create a little explosion, and the noxious fumes that come out of this animal, Yeah, it's really hot, and it's a combination of acids. Yeah, right. So the poor old snake, goes away chewing on the rocks, to try to get this stuff out of his eyes. All right. Now, can you imagine how the bombardier beetle must have gone through billions and billions and billions of chance tries in evolution before it finally evolved? Kept blowing himself up. In one case, in 4 billion cases, the gases weren't quite mixed right, or one was too cold, one was too hot. It's absurd to think that this could evolve, according to chance. That everything would come together. And the fact that you could have two bombardier beetles evolve at the same time to produce an offspring, or 4 pairs, 2 pairs to, to create 2 offspring so that the thing will continue.
Like that wonderful egg.
What's that?
That's the middle one now. Dinosaur laid an egg and came out of the bird. There was that wonderful fawn on the tree and then started getting sadder and sadder because he realized he was the only one. Then one of the woodpecker hidden. Like back in my home, the 1,000 times, 12,000 times now. Compared to the most powerful things a man can come up with, it doesn't even compare. 50 times brain, but all this.
Yeah, you gotta watch it.
It's really good. It's not like they all the tongue and flies low, fine tongue and woodpeckers are long tongue.
So it
Started around the back of the head.
came out of his nose, be forever tripping over it and stuff. Trying to fly.
But it just shows.
It all shows intelligent design. It doesn't show chance. The last significant quote in this reading was by Cicero. Chance never perfectly imitates design. Chance never perfectly imitates design. It's something you ought to remember. It's a famous man, famous quote, and it's the best thing that you can say in defense of, naturally speaking. Chance never perfectly imitates
To keep the author of that on.
Yeah, Cicero was a famous, well, here's my ignorance now, I think he was a Greek, he might have, maybe he was Roman orator. Is that a Greek or Roman anyway? I think he was Roman, yeah.
Well, I kept the statement, but I never put the name.
All right, so what example did he use?
4 days make no basis, 400 days make no basis. Fast.
Okay. It's a good point. Maybe you could believe evolution if the only thing involved in evolution is one thing.
Things that man come up with more, you break it down easier to get. More time to break it down, more complex.
That's right. And so one of the points that you need to understand about the teleological argument is that part of the argument is that it's not just the fact that things in the universe have intricacy, but it's the fact that so many things at the same time interrelate in an intricate way. So many things work in harmony together. That quotation that Blair had such a hard time with last night, we should read that, on top of page 152. I'll read it. On the combining for an advantageous end of otherwise disassociated elements with the impelling evidence of design which the result affords, Paul Janet writes, when a complex combination of heterogeneous phenomena is found to agree with the possibility of a future act, which was not contained beforehand in any of these phenomena in particular, this agreement can only be comprehended by the human mind by a kind of pre-existence in an ideal form of the future act itself, which transforms it from a result into an end, that is to say, into a final cause. You get that? That was wonderful. I liked it. The top of page 152.
You want my answer to that?
And so to explain it, he gives a quotation. In elucidation of this phenomenon of the combination of disassociated elements into one advantageous end,
That you can get the relation result according to the cause of the system where in the end the expected result of all parts functions respective to use the whole and the concept. That's what you're going to get it right. Yeah, that's the way
yeah.
I'm not sure you're going to get anything done at all.
Okay. To explain those three totally almost useless statements, he uses the example of a ship. Right? A ship is composed of a hull, it has masts and sails and anchors, a rudder, compass, and chart. Now, there is no necessary connection between all of those things. I mean, I can put you can take them apart. You can lay them out on the ground. There's no necessary relationship between them, right? They're heterogeneous phenomena. That is, they are different parts. Each one is different and separate from the others. However, the future use of a ship is not contained in any one of the individual parts, but is only possible through the combination. This combination of all the parts in the fully equipped ship has no interpretation in our rational intelligence, except in the previous existence of its use in human thought and purpose. In other words, somebody had to think up a ship to make it into what it is. And this is in fact the way it was. I mean, back about the time of Christ, they were using, ships like this that had, the Greeks and the Egyptians had oarsmen in their ships. So the ships were designed like this, all right? And they had sails and masts on them, all right? By the time you come to the 1400s BC, you try to take a ship like this out into the Atlantic from Spain or Portugal or England, and it'd last about 10 minutes or until the first storm. And so instead of making low ships like they had in the secluded Mediterranean and in the Adriatic Sea and all those places, they started making high ships with wide bottoms and wide gunnels, right? So that they would be, the water wouldn't splash over the sides as easy, right? And instead of one mast, they would put, several, one fore and aft and one in the center. So the main one, they could put 2 or 3 beams on it to increase the foot square area, to increase the speed, and then they'd put one in the front and one in the back to be able to turn it, end for end. And then they even got smart by sticking one out at the front, all right? So they all have their, and I don't know much about sailing, but I do know is that the design of ships changed before the New World was discovered. And it was necessary for the ship design to change in the 1400s before Columbus could actually go, and Jacques Cartier could actually make it to and back from the New World with furs and gold and all that stuff.
Somebody forgot to tell them that they went with the low ship.
Yeah, but see, their ship design had already been, they had already developed it. But there was a dramatic change in technology, ship technology, in Europe, in Southern Europe in particular, before the New World was discovered. And so the reason there is this mast and this mast and this mast, and the reason there is this kind of this relates to our subject now. The reason for it being this way is because somebody thought it up. Somebody designed it. And the reason they designed it was so they would do a certain thing. Right? So this ship is then, in effect, an effect. It's an effect that evidences human design for a particular purpose that a human being thought up. Right? Somebody wanted ships to make it there and back for transport purposes. So this thing is designed in such and such a way to perform such and such a function. And the very nature of it, the intricate relationships of all the different parts, manifests design and purpose. Right? Now, if you look at the human body, it has an eyeball, it has a nose, it has ears, it has a brain, and they are all connected, and there are it has motor muscles and nerves in the motor muscles. It has a skeleton that's designed a certain way to hold the organs in place and the muscles in place in such a way so that it can do something. Think without getting stepped on. Aren't you glad your brain's not on your feet? See? You can think and all that. Okay? And so the human body is obviously one of the best examples of the intricacy of design showing purpose. The many intricacies together, it's wonderful enough independently, but when you put them all together,
you know how it works, you don't know how it holds. Okay. And everybody gets through, you don't know how to get the loss, you know, and you don't know how to balance.
Man can't design it. Man can't make a brain.
So,
Okay, so I hope you understand the teleological argument. Let's just touch on a few points that he makes here. There is one verse in the Bible, for example, that illustrates this. Psalm 94:9. He who planted the ear, shall he not hear? Doesn't it argue back, does not the very existence of the ear argue back that somebody that had an ear must have been able, you know, in order for us to have ears, the first cause must have had an ear. He who formed the eye, shall he not see? I wrote down three quotations out of this chapter or section of the chapter. The first one was this one: the fact of design which is exhibited in everything created. The fact of design which is exhibited in everything created exposes the acumen and rational purpose of the Creator. For me, that summarizes the teleological argument in simple terms. Acumen is clear thinking and wisdom. Another quotation that I put down was this one: the simple fact of qualitative and quantitative adjustment of all things according to fixed law is a fact of the utmost significance. What he's referring to is the interrelationships of all these magnificently divine details. I don't know. It's been so long since I read through the chapter and made notes. I didn't put pages down for them. But
everything else we all thought maybe had that.
Right?
I don't remember that.
Isn't it interesting that if the interrelationships between the planets changed, we'd be in trouble down here? You know? Like, your circulatory system, Brian, depends, whether you believe it or not, on the interrelationship of the planets. Right? We're not talking about the signs of the zodiac, but if all of a sudden the moon started whooshing by the Earth within 50 miles, you know, and if the sun just happened to come in a little too close, you know, a couple of 100,000 miles, if that shifted out of kilter, your body temperature would go up, you know, you'd die from heat exhaustion, the forces of gravity would change, you wouldn't be able to walk, you know, because the planet would be too close. You know, half of the world would be covered by tidal waves. You see how that all the unique designs and intricate designs of the human body are perfectly in balance with even the planetary relationships. You know, and those relationships they can figure them out mathematically. That's the only way they can get guys to the moon and send these satellites out to Pluto and stuff. They've been able to discover what those laws are well enough that they can see that there is design out there, and there's design here. Yeah. Question? Oh yeah, there's several of the American astronauts that are believers, and they started ministry since they. Yeah, and then one Sputnik guy went up and said, "I looked around, I didn't see God." That probably got him a nice house on the Black Sea.
Yeah, done his equipment, he would have gone on Earth.
All right. What it boils down to then, the teleological argument boils down to two things. There's only two possible solutions to the question of design an adjustment of all things in the creation. Either it was designed this way intelligently to self-direct. You know, God put the laws there, designed the laws and put them in position. That's theism. Or no intelligence governs anything, and things just happened because they had to happen. And only the first of the two views is an adequate explanation. The other is no solution whatsoever. You either have to believe that there is intelligence behind the universe, or you have to believe there is no intelligence behind the universe.
Mankind keeps looking at mankind. That's the only reason I think of what people don't believe.
Well, and the fact that the heart is desperately wicked, like we do labor under the curse, and that's why people don't seek in the first place. You know? We were talking about that yesterday. That man has a natural bias to theism, in spite of the fact that there is enough in nature that makes them without excuse in God's sight. You know?
People that want to go up these Christians, it's just to separate themselves from
Okay. Big problem today. Now, the anthropological argument, which we'll spend time in class next time, is the culmination of these. It's the ultimate refining in the process of going from the general fact of such an effect that we have in the world, which demonstrates God's power, through the teleological argument, which is a little more specific description of the effect, that we have all kinds of independent systems that evidence design and obvious purpose because they fit so well. And that in itself points to an intelligent creator. Or an intelligent first cause. We haven't got a person yet. Right? Not necessarily intelligence, it's just undefined intelligence. Now when we come to the anthropological argument, hey, if something out there made people, that thing must be a person. That's basically the argument of the anthropological argument. Must be a person. Okay? So, we'll talk about that next class. All right? You might as well go ahead and read through that ontological argument a little bit, so that you're going to have to read it 3 or 4 times. It's the toughest one of the bunch.